and I went out today for Father's Day. Went to the Bonacord steam engine rally at Castle Fraser near Kemeny. There's a few interesting things there. This is actually a Fordson van. I didn't even know they existed. Old Transit Mark 1 sitting behind it as well. I knew there was Fordson lorries. So the old grey Fergie is what I call an orange tractor because it's original paint and original rust. What's next? Now this is a rare item. This is a Ferguson Brown. I've only ever seen two, and they've both been at this fair. It's probably the same one. I think we've got a couple of pictures of it coming up. 1936-ish, I think they were, something in that region. Made by David Brown, in association with Ferguson. I think that's where he started his 3-point linkage thing. It came on his tractor first, but I could be wrong. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. And I think this is a Ford Ferguson 2. Is it a 2N or was it the American number? Like I say, that's a Ford version. That's another picture of it. I see Ferguson in the background there. So somebody will tell me. And the old 8-litre Bentley from the Bentley boys. Used to hear around Brooklands and those things on safe speeds. And this is the Dauntless, because it tells you on it it's a Dauntless. It was a steam rally. There'll be video coming up shortly. It's just them getting ready to do the parade. That's Castle Fraser in the background there. I think this might be a 101 or not. It's a Fordson Super Major, articulated in the middle. It's got Matbro on the badge in the front, so maybe they were a conversion company. And it's like a roadless with a 4-wheel drive. I have got some video I can put up after this. But this guy who was there speaking, he thought that it was 6-cylinder diesel in it. He thought it was a combine engine because it's something to do with the governor and the timing or something. He was quite knowledgeable about it, but not seen one of these before. This is a very unusual Super Major because it's articulated in the middle. And it's 4-wheel drive like a roadless. I think this is a Citroen truck, and apparently there's only 2 in the UK, and this one's for sale if you've got a spare 15 grand. However, there was a display of various oils in the back, and they had the 140 gear oil for the David Brown final drive. So this is Sunday. Tomorrow the guy's going to come round with 5 litres for 30 quid. It's pretty reasonable. If I get a flyer for him, I'll put it up for you. But there's a lot of different oils at reasonable prices for vintage vehicles. This is the guy that had the oils details if you want to contact them. He restores early vehicles as well.
100 years old, and it's towing behind it a maple cart which would have been used to run from
heavy on the back. So this was Roby's solution, having a steamroller that could in fact roll tarmac. And the other feature of it is it can reverse very quickly. Fowler roller, this one, a typical product of John Fowler's of Leeds. Leeds was a huge area of engineering in its day. There were something like 22 manufacturers of steam products there, John Fowler's being the best known. Tarmac, when roads were waterbound, you simply, when they got potholed, you simply pulled them up and then rolled them down again. Now, of course, the scarifier fell into disuse once we got tarmac. Just sneaking past, we had a half-sized miniature engine there. And now
next in, we've got the Wizard. The Wizard is an Aveling and Porter KT type traction engine. There are only 2 of these in the world. One here in Scotland and the other one in South Australia. So they're quite a long way apart. The Wizard was supplied new to Moray County Highways up here in the northeast. Spent most of its days actually driving a rock crusher in a quarry, and then it was bought for preservation by the late Bill McConaughey, who set up the Bonacord Steam Engine Club.
Horse compound, and that was Clayton's offering. Clayton were one of the four manufacturers who could be found in Lincoln. We had a look at the Roby roller a little while ago, and there was Clayton's, there was also Ruston's and Foster's. Next we have another Aveling roller. You can always tell the Aveling, that's the one with the horse on the front. And that horse is actually the Kentish emblem, because of course Aveling and Porter's factory was in Rochester in Kent. And Invicta is the Kentish motto, which stands for undaunted, I'm told by the Latin scholars, but if you know better, well, fine. But we'll leave it at that. The next one up, coming along with the trailer, is Finella. The Barracks have had this engine for many, many years, miles an hour on the open road, and quite capable of pulling 25 or 30 tons without any difficulty slowing down. If you pull it into reverse, which you can do, then the pistons act in compression against the boiler pressure and the engine will stop quite quickly. A little Aveling
in Lothian. This particular engine has been up here in Scotland over 50 years, I believe, and attended some of the very early Castle Fraser, well, Bonacord Steam Engine Club steam events. It returned to steam about built down in Shrewsbury, and this is a six-wheeled steam wagon. The boiler is in front of the driver, and the engine is beneath the chassis, and it's got four wheels that drive at the back. And this is actually a tipping wagon. It can tip three ways, so depending on which pin contractors. Now, the next engine we've got coming in, I'm going to hand to Andrew because he knows quite a lot about it.
Now, this is the biggest engine you'll see here at the rally, or indeed anywhere else for that matter. This is a Fowler that's 10'6" wide, or if you're a bit younger than me, that's well over 3 metres. And as the average farm gate in the 1900s was about 8 foot wide, they weren't entirely suitable. But a great number of them were exported, and this particular one, along with many others, went to the Senna sugar estates in Mozambique, where it was used for the production of sugar, as you can imagine. And it can carry over half a mile of wire rope on that drum underneath, and they used to set the estate out with the roads 800 to 1,000 yards apart and the engines pull the implements between. Anyway, enough of that because we're getting behind. I'll let you do Heel and Laddie.
Thank you. So Heel and Laddie, that's the green Foden. You'll easily recognise this one because it's towing a steamboat. So there's lots of different things that can be steam powered. So what we've got there is Highland Laddie is a Foden steam tractor, and she was used for threshing work in Ayrshire, and then she's towing James Taskers of Andover and supplied new to Aberdeenshire County Council, another local engine. This engine is particularly unusual. It's the only one of its type left in the world, and it's actually a train-driven traction engine that was also convertible to a roller, but it's also slightly unusual in that it has mudguards. On the side of that were the founders of Pickfords. Now you may know Pickfords, the house-moving people, where they used to move machinery as well, and Normandy Box were machinery and heavy load movers. And Atlas was one of their fleet of Fowler traction engines that were used to move the heavy loads. What makes Atlas slightly unusual is that she was fitted so that she could also be a crane engine. Although it's believed that she never actually carried the crane parts, she's got big brackets at the front to put a jib on, and there's extra winding gear on the engine so that it could be used as a crane. It's believed that Atlas was basically a backup if their other crane engine failed. The next engine we've got coming in here is the Ransom, Sims and Jeffries traction engine. This was built in Ipswich in Suffolk. However, it was exported to Tasmania and spent its working life in Tasmania, returning to the southeast of England for restoration. This engine's its first appearance at a rally in Scotland today, having recently bought by some local individuals up here. It is here with the smaller wheels at the front. It's quite a quiet machine. You can hardly hear it running as it comes past. And then the next engine we've got is Sir William, that's a Marshall steamroller. So Marshalls were Gainsborough in Lincolnshire. They didn't build that many rollers, but at times they were able to build them quicker. than Aveling's. So rumour has it that Ilford Council went out to look for a roller. Aveling and Porter couldn't supply one quick enough, but Marshalls did. This particular roller was delivered to Ilford and worked out of the Ilford depot. Unusually,
because the U-boat menace was more significant in the First War than it was in the Second. And apparently in 1916 they were reckoned there was only 6 weeks' food left in the country. So to produce more food, they obviously needed to bring more acres into production. And the Ministry of Food ordered these engines from Fowler's and then loaned them out to contractors or to big estates or whoever it was. Now, if you're a ploughing engine man, which I'm proud to say I am, the first thing you look at on a ploughing engine is the winch rope. And that winch rope is nice and shiny, so it's been in regular use and it's beautifully coiled. You'll see how each layer is neatly stacked. And that's done automatically by the engine very accurately. And that's very, very important, because if the rope gets crossed over, it will kink. And once you've got a kink, it never actually straightens out, and it becomes a weak point. And ultimately, that's the point at which the rope will break. Coming now into the ring, we've got the oldest engine we've got here, I think. No, second oldest. Oh no, we haven't. We've got Validus. Okay, well that's the youngest of the 3-barrel single crank compounds. Miss Chain is shaking her head at me there. And this is part of Alfie Chain's fleet, just up the road at Rothermay. And we've actually unusually got 3 single crank compound engines here. And I'm going to let James explain to you what a single crank compound is.
Okay, so the 3 engines going around the arena, around the black one and the 2 red ones, were both built by Charles. They were all built by Charles Burrells of Thetford. Charles Burrells, design engineers, were very clever, and they came up with a way that you can have a compound engine. So in a compound engine, the steam is used twice, first in a high pressure cylinder and then in a low pressure cylinder. What's clever about these single crank compound engines is that they only have a single crank. So what you've got is the high pressure and the low pressure piston are connected together, and then they basically go back to a single crank. This was basically patented by Burrells, which meant that nobody else could copy it. So I'm just going to check here. So in the case of all these smaller steam engines, they've mostly been built by their owners, or they've been bought already running. So the first one here is Alexandra, Foden steam tractor. We've then got Mark Stevens, and then finally we've got the Wallace and Stevens traction engine heading round. This is from 1898, I believe. You'll hear it coming because its gears are very, very loud. Okay, ladies and gents, so there's 2 steam engines here that we haven't featured in the Grand Parade. And I hope you'll have already seen them, because you can't really miss them as you're walking along the event field. And that's the 2 Showman's engines that we have outside the beer tent. I hope you've all had a really good look at Supreme, which is the first engine you'll stumble across down there. That is the very big engine with a very tall chimney. Supreme is quite famous in that it was the last ever steam Showman's engine built in the United Kingdom. And what's special about it is that it had chrome plating on it as opposed to brass work. So if you have a closer look at that, that's the engine with A. Deakin and Sons, and that's Supreme. She was the last Showman's engine built in the United Kingdom. And then next to it's a slightly unusual engine, which is the Barrack family's Puddock. And the Puddock was actually built as a steamroller. The late Bill Barrack rescued it in the UK, that's on pneumatic tyres. So we're going to get all the miniatures lined up across the front here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to make a lot of noise with some whistles, and then what we're going to do is we'll drop the fences down and members of the public can come into the arena and take photographs if they so wish.
Only 2 engines that originally had chrome plate. There was Supreme and the big Foster Showman called Success. They were both built in 1934, when this new process had actually finally been invented, as you might say, and Mrs. Deakin wanted her engine to have the very last of everything, the best of everything. And so Supreme came out chromium plated. It only worked on the fairground for about 6 years.
Enjoy your food, right? Well, you better try and get steam for if you can. Yeah.